Oh, students, I didn't hear you come in. Welcome to class. Today is going to be a little bit different, but we're going to be learning about something we've been talking about the last few days. Yesterday, you remember you heard a really interesting recording from my friend Dr. Oblongata. He was teaching you about all those parts of the brain. Today, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the brain, but I'm going to give you some visual aids to help you better understand what each part of the brain is able to help you do. So let's take a look back at the parts of the brain that we know. First, the temporal lobe, then the occipital lobe, the frontal lobe, and the parietal lobe. The first visual aid I'm going to give for you is for the temporal lobe. And as Dr. Oblongata told you, the temporal lobe is best used for emotion, memory, speech, and hearing. As I promised, I'm going to give you some visuals to help you better understand these parts of the brain. So the first one, temporal, let me give you an example of how I would use my temporal in multiple ways. "We're not aiming for the truck," cried Buzz, making a graceful loop. Buzz headed for the sunroof of Andy's car. He executed a perfect dive into a box on a seat next to Andy. "Hey, wow," yelled Andy with glee. "Woody, Buzz, where were they?" his mother asked. "Here, in the car," said Andy. As you can see, without my temporal lobe, I could not speak the words from the book. I could not hear myself reading the words, and I could not feel the emotion of happiness that I feel that Buzz and Woody have found Andy. So let's move on to the next part of our brain that we've been talking about, the occipital lobe. So what do we use our occipital lobe for? Oh, gee, I don't remember. Maybe vision? That's right. We use our occipital lobe to see and to process the things that we see. I couldn't watch my favorite shows on Disney without my occipital lobe.
Say, those graphics are amazing. You know, that type of definition is made possible.
The third part of the brain we talked about and that Dr. Oblongata explained to you was the frontal lobe. This is the lobe of the brain that helps us do problem solving, use reasoning, and use judgment. Here's an example of me using my frontal lobe. You can't do math without your frontal lobe. Last but certainly not least on our visual tour of the brain is the parietal lobe. The lobe responsible for pain, touch, movement, and also speech, much like the temporal lobe. But we are going to show a visual of the parietal lobe now. Getting a kick-in workout on the Bowflex would be impossible without the use of my parietal lobe. 1 million! Well, students, I hope these visuals have helped you to better understand what the lobes of the brain actually do. Let's recap the temporal lobe. You couldn't do things like read your favorite books without the temporal lobe. The next one we talked about was the occipital lobe. You can't watch TV, especially Disney, without your occipital lobe. The next one was your frontal lobe. You can't do math without your frontal lobe. And the last one was your parietal lobe. You can't get a kicking workout, you can't move, you can't feel pain, you can't get awesome muscles without your parietal lobe. Thanks for watching, class. I'll see you later. Brain teaser. Do dogs and humans have the same types of brains? Do they have the same parts? What do you think?